Hi there, Lorraine Smith here, and I'm diving into another materiality assessment, this one on JBS, the world's largest meat company. I'm going to work out loud a little bit here, just share a few of the things that I'm finding as I'm getting ramped up on this one. In particular, I want to share three things just in the spirit of working out loud, and because some of these things might not be visible in the final deck, but I think the findings as I go are useful, at least they are for me, and they may be in some way for you as on your own journey, however you might be leaning into this. So the three things that I'm going to touch on here are just the muddle in getting to the very first thing I like to look at, which is the purpose of a company, what it is they say they do. The second thing is just to explore a little bit the structure of the company, which might explain the muddle. And then thirdly, to highlight a little glitch in reality that I've bumped into, which is for me, sort of what I seek out in these materiality assessments, really trying to nest environmental, social, and governance disclosures in reality and seeing where sometimes reality glitches a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll do what I can to sort of highlight the process and really welcome feedback and questions as I go. Here we go. First thing I'm doing here is looking for what the company says it does. I'm doing that because the next thing I'm going to do is look at what the company does to earn money. So how much coherence is there in what they say they do and what they get paid to do. And after that, I start to explore what stakeholders think the company can and needs to do in order to deliver on the future they want. So I'm looking at their purpose. I'm doing that in a few ways. I go to their website and already I bump into some muddle. So you'll notice here, by the way, I hyperlink as much as I can so I can follow the breadcrumbs back. So each of these goes back to the website where I got the little screen grab. These slides are going to evolve. At the moment, this is just me kind of trying to organize things and line them up. And these boxes on the left are outlined in green, and that's because they came from the .br, the Brazilian website, the sort of main global headquarter website. On the right, these ones are coming from the .com, which is the JBS USA website, but it's also very global, and I'll explain a bit more about my confusion there and what I'm finding. And I respect that some of this is just me trying to figure things out. At the same time, I think some of these are very basic disclosures. They ought not to be quite so challenging to wrap one's mind around when a company is the largest meat company in the world, because they have a really big impact. So here I just outline a little bit of trying to understand their purpose on the .br, so the global headquarters. They talk about the purpose of feeding the world. On the .com, they talk about the purpose of making every occasion delicious and every meal good for the world. Those things aren't by any means diametrically opposed, but they're not the same. That might be a little bit of just corporate comms needing to clean up and keep up with head office, or something else. I don't know. But when I try to compare the purpose, I do notice that there's some clashing. And so I use the green underlining just to visually signal for me where there's coherence. So deeper into their financial and sustainability report, which is one document for JBS in their 2021 report, I see that purpose from their .br headquarters repeated. But then I see their sustainability purpose is phrased a little differently. And then their purpose is described later in the report, but it's called their mission, which then when I look at their mission is to be the best in everything they do, fully focused on the business, delivering the best products and services to customers, building trust with suppliers, creating value for shareholders, and offering a better future for the workforce. That's their mission, which is different from their purpose to feed the world with the best there is, but sometimes they're interchanging the words. And so I'm just kind of looking for how does this all fit together. And when they talk about sustainability, they talk about their mission, which is to feed the world, which feels like a bit of a mashup of their purpose, dropping a bunch of their other mission. And when I go to the US version of their sustainability statement, which may or may not be their mission, it's about meeting today's tastes for a more sustainable tomorrow. We could call this like some need to tidy up their corporate communications. But for me, starting out on this assessment, trying to understand how much coherence is there in the way they earn revenue compared to what they say they do, I'm already a little bit kind of on my back foot trying to understand what it is they say they do. So I'll work that out as I go, but that's where we are with the mission. And when I stand back still in big picture, like what do these folks do mode, I try to just very basically wrap my arms around like how do they function? What goes on? What are the basic pieces of the business? So again, outlined in green is the .br headquartered Brazil website bits. And again, I've hyperlinked everything so that I can double back and find these breadcrumbs, because my goodness, there's a lot of ways they are slicing and dicing this. It took me a bit to realize there's 2 different global sites. So on the Brazilian side, on the left here, they give some nuts and bolts about who they are, their history, their size. And then there's this map that breaks down the geographical and sort of business line, like types of meat and other operations. And on the US side, they kind of do the same. And what I was finding very confusing was, you'll notice on the Brazilian side here, or the global side from Brazil, we see Brazil on the map, we see parts of Africa on the map, we see China on the map, and other parts of Asia. When we go to the US side, which initially I was just like, well, I guess it's just the US, but it's not just the US. On the .com, they talk about global geographies, but not Brazil, not Africa, not Asia. So at this point, I start to ask, okay, where do I go for the most accurate disclosures about what they're doing and how they're doing it and what impacts they're having and how they're working towards sort of being the best? And I'm not looking for this to like have a kind of gotcha moment of like, look, they have inconsistencies. It's more like I'm trying to understand, what are they doing and what are the impacts, because they're feeding a lot of people and they're producing, or at least connected to the production of a lot of livestock. There's huge impacts here. So I really want to understand. So I get to the global structure, the global management structure, and this gives me a little hint as to why it might be a little tough to keep on top of the web communications. I don't know any company that's like, oh, we're totally on top of our web stuff, it's really easy. I don't think that's an excuse for sloppy disclosures and inconsistencies, but I kind of get how it happens. So here, this is actually from, again, just reminding myself that I gave myself some breadcrumbs here. This is from the .br global website, and I spliced in here a little screen grab from their 2021 report from page 122, which explains a little bit about the restructuring they went through in 2021 and how they're, as of 2022, so it's coming on a year, how this global structure plays out. I was looking at this and thinking, bless Jason Weller, the new Global Chief Sustainability Officer. He'll have his work cut out for him in trying to make sense of how the goals and performance are managed and measured and executed across the company. And I'll show a little bit more about that in a moment. But setting aside the task he has, and I can imagine it's quite a learning curve to run up, and lots to wrap one's arms around there, and exciting to think that somebody, my understanding of where Jason comes from, lots of background in regenerative agriculture and a more kind of grassroots look at that. So I actually don't know him, hope perhaps to connect one day, but I think that signals an interesting direction. But as I go deeper here, I see a lot of things that merit exploration. I mean, one really obvious one, I don't know if it jumps out for anybody else, but when I look at this global structure, I see, I'll just gently call it a lack of diversity, gender-wise, and probably background and ethnicity-wise. I'm making some blunt assumptions, but it strikes me as, given the global nature of the company, and I'm going to learn more about, who produces them and who eats them. But from what I understand so far, it's quite global, very connected within the global south. And I don't, at a glance here, see accurate representation of the people who produce and eat them, just in terms of the overall look. But of course, I'm making some assumptions. And that aside, we have some interesting structure here. So this is global CEO headquartered in Brazil. So this is Gilberto Tomazoni, and he is the CEO and sits on the board of directors. when I follow the sort of maze, which I can mostly do, if I go under Batista Filho here, I go down into the USA with Tim Shellpepper as the president of this. And when I go into let me just go back. When I go into this .com world, I do see his name and his structure showing up there. So it's still a little confusing to me. Let me get myself out of the USA here. A little confusing to me that this is the USA and it all overarches a USA team. And then there's Australia, and then there's also JBS Brazil and all these other brands. And there's a great deal to the sort of global stuff that I'm not totally seeing how it breaks down. I don't work there. It's not for me to know all the details. But again, I'm really trying to get to, where do I go for accurate information about the impacts? And I'll show you where I see that starting to get a little more confusing. So this is from the .com about their goals. .com being the JBS USA website that talks a lot about the global impacts and that map that doesn't have Brazil and China and Africa, but has the rest of the world. So then I look at their global goals, and there's JBS Global here, which I didn't go line by line, but this roughly, from what I can tell, chimes with what the .br says they're doing. And then here's the .com and how they're tracking towards it. And I'm a little bit lost how that connects to other geographies. So I need to dig into that a little bit more, because they do have some really ambitious, what we could call sustainability goals. And so I want to understand, how's that going? And I also really want to follow the money a little bit. So I'm still just trying to figure that out. So that's the kind of confusion on the purpose and the structure. Those are two of the three things I mentioned. I want to touch briefly on the third, which is the glitch in reality. So this was kind of interesting. One of the things, even though I was trying to be disciplined and start out with, what's their purpose, you'll see I hyperlink this. This photo takes us to, it's from the kind of landing page of the sustainability website on the .com. And I was just kind of journeying, getting started. I was like, oh, this is interesting, because, of course, one of the biggest things that stakeholders, especially critical stakeholders of the company, are making noises about, and I'm just at the beginning, but I wasn't born yesterday, so I'm hearing some of this, of course, is around the impacts, certainly animal welfare impacts, and how all the animals, not just the cattle, but many other animals in their supply chain, how they fare, and the environmental impacts of raising cattle. This comes up again and again, and there's lots to explore there. So I see this image on there, essentially the landing page of sustainability. This is me just clicking on it. It takes up the whole screen, so it's a very prominent image. And I think, oh, this is interesting. They're illustrating what I would interpret as grass-fed, possibly even holistic grazing, depending on how this goes. So I'm like, oh, I want to find a caption and find out more about these cows from this company, because I'm on this company's website. I don't see a caption. There's nothing there. If you scroll, you start to go into more kind of verbiage about what they care about. So I was like, oh, well, how do I find out about this picture? So just exploring, non-digital native here, I right-click and I go to search image with Google. I was like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And then what happens is I'll take you to the shortcut, because there's a few clicks here. What happens is I learn that actually this is a stock image. And it's a Shutterstock image. So this isn't JBS cattle. I suppose it's theoretically possible that it is, but there's nothing that indicates that it is. Anybody could use this image. Just buy it from Shutterstock. It's a stock picture. That's greenwash. I mean, I'm sort of stating the obvious here, but it's like if you land on a company's page where they're telling you about their sustainability and they lead with a photo that isn't them. I don't know. I don't like that. So I keep digging, because this isn't a gotcha thing. This is, well, what is happening, right? So okay, there's some greenwash happening. What else is happening? I kept on digging. I was in other channels, mostly in the .br. Frankly, there's a lot more detailed disclosures there. And I've got to come back to this. I've got a little pin in this one to double back and watch these videos that are a couple clicks in from the sustainability report, going deeper into the supply chain information, some of the transparency and traceability initiatives that they're working on. There's some videos here, and I will make a point of watching those and getting a sense of what those stakeholders are saying who are from within the supply chain. Lots more to learn there, so I'd just be speculating if I said more. I'm grateful that I speak Portuguese. Thank you, Rotary Exchange, back in 1989. So I can actually listen and learn directly from these stakeholders, and I'm looking forward to doing that. That is a quick little tiki tour of some of the things that are lifting up early on in the process here. Next up, I'm going to be diving into the investor disclosures. I've got my work cut out for me there because I lost the trail in where I see those transcripts. They seem to end after 2019, but it's 2023. So I know there's more, and I know a lot has happened in global food and certainly in this company in the last 3 years. So we'll see where I go. Thanks for following along, and feedback, thoughts, questions, always very welcome. Bye for now.